There are 36 gubernatorial races on the ballot in the 2026 midterms, with Democrats and Republicans each defending 18 seats, including contests in nearly every key presidential battleground. 15 incumbent governors are ineligible to run again due to term limits. Among them is Democrat Laura Kelly in Kansas, leaving her party vulnerable in a state Donald Trump carried by 16 points in the 2024 presidential election. Democrats will also have to defend Gretchen Whitmer's seat in Michigan, another state Trump won last November, though by a much narrower margin of just 1.4%. Meanwhile, Republicans will be playing defense in the swing state Georgia. Let's start by filling in the map with the states that are currently considered safe for each party. Of course, I should note that these projections are just a snapshot in time, and some are bound to age poorly, but as of now, these are the races with a better than 90% chance of going one way or the other. For Democrats, that starts with California, where Governor Gavin Newsom is stepping down after 2 terms. Whether it's Kamala Harris returning to state politics or another Democrat stepping up, the Golden State remains solidly blue, and Republicans simply don't have a strong enough bench to make this race competitive. Elsewhere, Democrats have incumbents running for re-election in Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, and Connecticut. All 5 states backed Kamala Harris by double-digit margins in 2024, and each of these governors currently enjoys strong approval ratings. That's not quite the case in Rhode Island, where Democratic Governor Daniel McKee holds a net approval of just plus 2%, with 43% of voters approving and 41% disapproving, ranking him among the least popular governors in the country. Still, as is often the case in institutionally blue states like Rhode Island, Republicans don't have a credible challenger to take advantage. It's also worth keeping in mind that the 2026 cycle should shape up as a relatively favorable environment for Democrats. Historically, the party out of power in the White House tends to perform well in the first midterm, and this will be the first major national election since President Trump returned to office. The final safe blue state is Colorado. Incumbent Jared Polis is term limited, but U.S. Senator Michael Bennet has already launched a bid for the seat, effectively closing the door on any slim chance Republicans had of competing here. So that makes 8 safe governorships for the Democrats. On the Republican side, they'll be defending seats with incumbents in the ruby red states of Idaho, South Dakota, Nebraska, Arkansas, Texas, and yes, even deep blue Vermont. That's Phil Scott's seat. Year after year, he ranks as the most popular governor in the country. And in 2024, he won re-election by over 50 points. Granted, as a Vermont Republican, he's arguably to the left of many Oklahoma Democrats, but his dominance is still notable, especially considering Vermont has given Democrats their largest margin of victory in every presidential election over the last decade. Now, as for the states where Republicans won't have an incumbent running, Wyoming, Oklahoma, Tennessee, and Alabama, it simply doesn't matter. These 4 states backed Trump by 46, 34, 30, and 31 points, respectively, putting them among the 10 most Republican states in the country. There is, of course, an outside chance that a state like South Carolina or Florida could become competitive, but that would likely require a major scandal on the Republican side or a particularly strong Democratic challenger. Until that happens, they'll round out the safe Republican states, bringing the GOP's total up to 12, on top of the 9 states they already hold where there's no gubernatorial election this cycle. And I say at least because there's one more state I'm genuinely torn on between a safe and likely Republican rating. New Hampshire. Like its neighbor, Vermont, it's been a fundamentally blue state at the federal level for the past 2 decades, but it's far more competitive. New Hampshire has voted for the Democratic presidential candidate in 6 consecutive cycles, but always by single-digit margins, and hasn't elected a Republican U.S. Senator since 2010. Yet newly elected Republican Governor Kelly Ayotte is a strong incumbent. She significantly overperformed expectations in 2024, winning the governorship by 9 points, even as Kamala Harris carried the state by 3. All 3 expert ratings currently have New Hampshire as at least likely Republican, with inside elections even going as far as to call it a safe bet. I'm leaning more toward likely for now as we wait to see who Democrats nominate to take on a yacht. That leaves us with 15 more competitive races, though they still vary in their degree of lean toward one party or the other. Let's continue on with our likely states, defined as those with a strong tilt toward one side, but where an upset is still possible. Starting in Iowa, incumbent Kim Reynolds is retiring, which would usually be a problem for Republicans, except Reynolds is actually the most unpopular governor in the country. That's according to Morning Consult, whose data shows just 44% of Iowans approve of her job performance, while 49% disapprove. That disapproval figure is 5 points higher than any other sitting governor. So in a way, Reynolds stepping aside may actually be a blessing in disguise for the GOP, especially considering Democrats are likely to nominate a very strong candidate in State Auditor Rob Sand, who remains the only Democrat to win a statewide election in Iowa this decade. If not for Iowa's sharp Republican shift in recent cycles, Democrats would be well positioned here. But the reality is Iowa is simply a very red state now. Trump carried it by 13 points last November. You could maybe convince me to mark this one as lean Republican, but for now it stays in the likely column on my map. This race, in many ways, feels like the mirror image of Oregon. Oregon is about as blue as Iowa is red, yet incumbent Democrat Tina Kotek is also among the least popular governors in the country, with a net approval of just +4. From a fundamental standpoint, Kamala Harris won Oregon by 14 points last November, so even with Kotek's weak numbers, it would take a seriously strong Republican challenger to make this race competitive. The other two likely Republican seats are in Kansas and Alaska. Kansas, notably, would be a flip. Trump won the state by 16 points in 2024, making it the GOP's top pickup opportunity on the entire map. Laura Kelly originally flipped this seat in 2018, benefiting from a national blue wave and widespread backlash to former Republican Governor Sam Brownback's deeply unpopular tenure. She managed to win re-election in 2022 thanks to strong personal approval ratings and the momentum surrounding the abortion rights referendum that year. But without Kelly's name on the ballot, Republicans are extremely well positioned. Secretary of State Scott Schwab has already emerged as a strong early contender, and I wouldn't be surprised if this race moves closer to safe Republican as we approach Election Day. In Alaska, former Democratic Congresswoman Mary Peltola is reportedly very interested in running after losing her House seat this past November. She's already proven she can win statewide, having done so as recently as 2022. I'd still give Republicans the edge here, likely with Lieutenant Governor Nancy Dahlstrom as their nominee, but if Peltola jumps in, an upset wouldn't be out of the question, especially if signs of a significant blue wave begin to emerge. Ohio presents a similar dynamic. It's about as Republican as Alaska these days, with Trump carrying the state by 11 points in 2024. Incumbent Governor Mike DeWine is term limited, and Vivek Ramaswamy is widely expected to secure the Republican nomination. But I anticipate he'll be a below-average general election candidate. If Congressman Tim Ryan decides to enter the race, this one could quickly become highly competitive. Until then, though, Ohio leans Republican. Now shifting to the likely blue column for the Democrats, that includes New Mexico, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, New York, and Maine. In Minnesota, incumbent Governor Tim Walz is expected to seek a third term fresh off some national exposure. He's far from the strongest incumbent in the country, but being an incumbent still gives him an edge in a state that's been as reliably blue as any in modern political history. It's often competitive, but Republicans haven't won a federal or gubernatorial race here in nearly 2 decades. The dynamics are nearly identical in both Maine and New Mexico, where Democratic incumbents are term limited. Despite being quite different demographically, the two states have followed strikingly similar voting trends in recent cycles. Kamala Harris carried Maine by 7 points and New Mexico by 6. 4 years earlier, Biden won Maine by 9 and New Mexico by 11. Both the Cook Political Report and Sabato's Crystal Ball give these races a likely Democrat rating. Pennsylvania is almost always considered one of the most competitive states on the map, regardless of the race. But not this time. Incumbent Josh Shapiro is running for re-election with one of the strongest approval ratings in the country and a proven track record of overperformance. He won his first term by a 15-point margin during the 2022 midterms. Finally, there's New York. Historically one of the most reliable blue states in the nation, but not anymore. It saw the largest pro-Trump shift of any state between 2020 and 2024, and incumbent Democrat Kathy Hochul now ranks among the 10 least popular governors in the country. That leaves her vulnerable to both a serious primary challenge and a competitive general election. On the Republican side, Congressman Mike Lawler has publicly expressed interest in running. He's one of the strongest congressional overperformers in the nation, winning re-election in New York's 17th district by over 6 points in a D+3 district. In fact, many Republicans are urging him not to run for governor, believing he may be the only Republican capable of holding that seat in the House. Even without Lawler, it's worth remembering that the last gubernatorial race in New York, back in 2022, was much closer than expected. Republican Lee Zeldin came within 7 points of defeating Hochul, winning the highest share of the vote for a GOP candidate since 2002 and the most raw votes since 1970. That said, this is still New York. Republicans haven't won a major statewide election here in more than 20 years, and Kamala Harris still carried it by 12.5 points in 2024. That leaves us with just 5 more races still to be determined. In the Rust Belt, we've got Michigan. With Democratic incumbent Gretchen Whitmer term limited, this race is shaping up to be one of the most competitive of the cycle. Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson appears to have the inside track for the Democratic nomination, while Republicans got their best news yet when Congressman John James announced his bid for governor. James is about as strong a general election candidate as Republicans could hope for in Michigan, effectively neutralizing the advantage Democrats usually enjoy as incumbents in a state with a roughly even partisan lean. And in a cycle that's expected to favor Democrats nationally, that kind of balance becomes even more meaningful. That said, there's a major third-party wildcard here, independent Mike Duggan, the mayor of Detroit since 2014. Duggan is a rare example of a big city mayor with high approval ratings, and his statewide name recognition alone gives him a formidable base of support. Right now, he's pulling in around 20% of the vote across the 4 polls that have tested a 3-way race between Benson, James, and Duggan. Benson has led in all 4, but by 5 points or less in each of the last 3. Personally, I've got Michigan hovering between tilt Democrat and toss-up, and since I know you guys think it's a cop-out when I label a state a toss-up, understandable, this is a prediction channel, I'll lock in tilt blue here. But make no mistake, it's basically a coin flip. Then there's Wisconsin, where incumbent Democrat Tony Evers is eligible to run for a 3rd term, though he hasn't officially announced his plans. If he does, Democrats will hold a fundamental edge. Wisconsin's partisan lean is as even as it gets. 5 of the last 7 presidential elections here were decided by less than 1 point, including each of the last 3. The state's Senate races in both 2022 and 2024 were also decided by razor-thin margins. Still, Evers overperformed in his 2022 re-election bid, beating Republican Tim Michels by 3.5 points, despite trailing in most polls leading up to Election Day. That win is a solid data point in Democrats' favor, assuming Evers jumps back in. For now, I've got Wisconsin rated as lean Democratic, especially given the lack of a clear Republican frontrunner at this stage. Now let's head down south to Georgia. Republican Governor Brian Kemp is term limited, so just like in Michigan, this is shaping up to be one of the closest races of the cycle. Georgia remains one of the most competitive states in presidential elections and continues to trend slightly to the left of the national average, but its statewide offices have still leaned red. In the 2022 midterms, Republicans swept every statewide office, winning by margins of 5 to 10 points, despite a generally favorable national environment for Democrats. The GOP also continues to control both chambers of the Georgia legislature. As for the 2026 governor's race, both primary fields remain wide open. On the Republican side, State Attorney General Chris Carr is the only major declared candidate so far. But Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones has expressed interest and is expected to make a decision after the current legislative session. Carr and Jones are seen as even favorites to win the GOP nomination, according to the prediction markets. Jones would likely be Trump's pick if the former president endorses, given his more active support of Trump following the 2020 election. On the Democratic side, former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms is currently the biggest name in the mix. Two-time nominee Stacey Abrams is also reportedly considering a third run, along with Congresswoman Lucy McBath. As of now, prediction markets give Lance Bottoms about a 30% chance of winning the nomination. Like Michigan, this race is hovering between tilt and toss-up, but this time it tilts Republican. Georgia is fundamentally more conservative than Michigan, and Republicans are defending the seat. We'll wait to see how the candidate fields shape up. All right, let's wrap things up in the Southwest with Nevada and Arizona. In Nevada, Republican Governor Joe Lombardo enters 2026 with solid approval ratings and plans to run for re-election, riding the momentum of a significant rightward shift in the state's politics. Trump carried Nevada by over 3 points in 2024, becoming the first Republican to win the state at the presidential level since 2004. Lombardo's own win in 2022, when he unseated Democratic Governor Steve Sisolak, was one of the first signs that Nevada was trending red. Now, Sisolak has told the New York Times he's weighing a comeback just months after Attorney General Aaron Ford announced his candidacy. If neither drops out, Democrats could face a major primary showdown, one that would almost certainly benefit Lombardo by giving him a head start in messaging, fundraising, and building out his campaign infrastructure. Even without that advantage, I'd still give Lombardo the edge as the incumbent, especially with strong approval ratings in a state where momentum clearly favors the GOP. That said, if Democrats perform well nationally in 2026, Nevada could flip. It remains one of the most competitive states in the country. Now on to Arizona, another high-stakes opportunity for Republicans. Democratic Governor Katie Hobbs's approval rating is solid, if unremarkable. She narrowly defeated Kari Lake in 2022, but Lake proved to be a deeply flawed candidate, something she reinforced with her performance in the 2024 Senate race. This time around, Republicans are choosing between Congressman Andy Biggs and former gubernatorial candidate Karen Taylor Robson, who earned co-endorsements from Donald Trump earlier this year. Robson would be a much stronger general election candidate. Biggs, one of the most hardline members of the House, could struggle statewide. Arizona voters have rejected far-right candidates before, most notably Lake and Blake Masters. Right now, betting markets give Biggs about a 70% chance of securing the nomination. If it weren't for Arizona's sharp red shift in 2024, Trump won the state by 5.5 points. I'd give Hobbs the edge, but given the fundamentals and GOP momentum, this one is truly a toss-up. Still, for now, I'll give Hobbs the slight edge as the incumbent. So with that, Republicans are projected to win 19 governor's races in 2026, gaining 1 seat in Kansas, while Democrats are projected to win 17. As always, drop your thoughts on this analysis in the comments below. Shout out to my channel members listed in the description. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like if you enjoyed the video. Check out more of my content here, and as always, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you next time. EP out.